Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, Smudcast 813. Why listen to the players doesn't work? Why listening to the players doesn't work? I'm assuming this is about video games. This could be related to many things in media, but let's just assume gaming because the comments from the channel seem to point out to that. And this is from Viveros. It came out in, 3 days ago. So,
Nice.
Brand new video, 6,000 views, lots of upvotes, very few downvotes. So obviously this is a big video. It'll take about an hour to cover naturally. For us, it'll probably take 2 days, and we might even quit halfway through. We might skip ahead. He nicely labeled these sections, and they're big sections. So we might get bored, or we might get tired, or we might get, just this is going to be silly commentary, repetitive stuff. Who knows? I don't know what to expect from this guy. But the idea of listening to fans during updates of a game that has launched is practical. It is normal. It is how you balance things. We could talk about the crazy balancing issues of Helldivers 2 the past year and how that has been great and horrible. There's all kinds of style of games that this benefits from, and there's lots of style of games that this would damage the game. So there's arguments to be made on very specific topics, and we don't know where to go with this.
I remember old times in the World of Warcraft forums in Classic, where players made tons of amazing suggestions and bug fixes that were never addressed. And oftentimes the excuse is that, well, there are players who make really dumb suggestions, and that is true. That doesn't mean you should just discard all of them. Then there's also some developers seem to have this weird fear that if they do something that a fan suggested or seeming fan suggested, that fan will then somehow lay claim to, you did my thing, now you need to pay me royalties. These crazy things have happened. They're rare, but they do have happened. And I don't know.
Well, there's like
it's just stupid all over.
Well, there are some exceptions. Back when Sega was pushing out the mobile ports of the early Sonic games, they actually got fan developers to do those, and then eventually got those fans to make an entirely new game, which was Sonic Mania. And
that's the cool way.
That's the cool way, and that game's considered one of the best in the series because of that. Because it's the fans that have played these games for years, that know how everything works, have been working with the code base for almost as long, and know how to make a good experience for fans like them.
Right? Are you implying that if gamers make video games, that they actually turn out good?
Yes, and I have no shame about it.
Well, the idea of a game as big as, let's say, League of Legends, where every patch has a nerf or a buff, and I remember before we had those big MOBA games, people who did Three Corridors or Dota, like the original Dota on Warcraft 3 Battle.net, they would, instead of balancing a character they just created, they would instead buff another one that would be that character's counter. And you'd have the meta would change every week because you'd find out who got buffed. Mm-hmm. And then that's the problem with a lot of these game designs, is the concept of balancing is not about buffing properly, it's about nerfing everything. So everything's generic, and the cool thing that you can do with this character is just now, it's just a thing that this guy can do, which is very similar to like everyone else, because it's not as amazing or as practical. So
that's a crap variant that the Riot Games went for, where every new thing, Games Workshop does the same thing.
Yeah. Every
new thing that is released is mega overpowered, which is its advertisement, and then it's nerfed into the ground to everyone else.
Yeah, it was.
That's not cool.
It was so disappointing, because I don't remember if you guys played before first season of League. Like Heimerdinger had like 14 turrets, everything was just over the top, fun, crazy. And you were just getting used to it because people were playing Dota. People were coming from all those games which we loved, And then we got this homogenized client that is just for that game. And you're like, oh, wow, you could do all these cool things. This guy's like this and this guy's like that. And then people went, oh, there's a new hero every month. And then there's a new hero every 2 months. Then you had this roster of 100 and God knows how many heroes. And now it's hard to keep up. I stopped playing that game a while back.
I think I stopped somewhere around 76.
76.
I tried to play it once.
Yeah.
Gave up after that.
I also stopped very far back. I think that my biggest problem with League of Legends was that a lot of the stuff was purely balanced for the tournament players.
Interesting.
Yeah, a lot of champions were just usable, and then someone made something crazy on LCS or somewhere else, and then the thing gets nerfed into the ground, and yeah, you barely can play it.
I do remember some players like doing an exploit like Alistair's WQ, which was a headbutt followed by a stomp. And that was the guy, like, I can't remember what team he was a part of, but once he saw that exploit, then Riot went, oh, that's a thing we could do. And they made it so everyone can do it, as opposed to the skill of someone doing something like that, which is fine. But it's kind of like, oh, this is what we want to do with our character now. And a player had to literally show how that worked within the functionality that they never thought of, which was already there. So there's lots of things between games like that, and there's the flip side of that where you have games like the Fallout series or any of the Bethesda games where there's a huge modding community, and they pretty much make the content. Like, I don't know about Fallout 4 these days, but everyone's making a map, everyone's making a mod, and that's why Fallout 4 is so popular. Not because it's the next gen or this newest thing. There's all kinds of Fallout 76 crap and who knows what else. It's because
then they would make it for Starfield.
Yeah, because they would just make another Fallout and then say, this is the new thing, and they'd sell more. So they keep these things alive. I think they try to do paid mods or a marketplace of mods.
Yeah.
They did try with Skyrim, with backfire.
They ended up doing Creation Club.
Yeah, and now they just made a mobile Skyrim Fallout Shelter style game, which is, I didn't even play it, but I'm like, I'll think I'll wait to check that out. So they're doing things that people technically want, just in the wrong direction that you want them to go. And if they just listen to the mods,
it's not games made by gamers anymore. It's games made by a board that wants to exploit an IP.
Yeah.
I get that feeling with League of Legends because it's no longer the cute little, everyone loves Dota, let's do our own thing kind of.
I get that feeling with Bethesda.
Oh god, yeah, for sure. After 3, yeah, everything was like, whoa, it's 3D now, it's open world.
Not just with Fallout, but also with the Elder Scrolls, where Skyrim is really fucking basic, and Todd Howard is on record as saying he wants to simplify the Elder Scrolls 6 even more than that.
Wow.
That is a very scary thought.
So what would that look like? Heavy rain, but you cannot fail on any of the prompts?
Probably.
I would love to see a Skyrim heavy rain interface with all the crazy gestures and motions.
Apparently they're going to set it in Hammerfell.
Oh, interesting.
Just ignore all that and all move back all together. We do some roommate thing and open up shop in Vardenfell.
Yes.
Just all the way back. Yeah.
All right.
Everything was nice.
We got 57 minutes to go through. Let's see how this gentleman goes. What his topic is. I don't even know if it's about gaming. It probably is, but we'll see.
Let's hope.
It does apply to just about any entertainment thing. Well, anything where you have a customer. I listen to the customers doesn't work.
I hope he doesn't. He doesn't conflate.
All right. So I know there's a very good chance that a decent number of people have clicked on this video because they're angry at the title. I understand.
I wanted to say, I hope he doesn't conflate players and people who pretend to be players. That's all.
I get that some of you are going to think that this is just me saying that fans are dumb or whatever, and that I'm just defending Blizzard here, but I'm going to ask you to please actually watch the full thing before leaving a comment where you assume the arguments you think I'm going to make here. I get it's a long video. If you don't want to watch the whole thing, that's fair. Just don't leave a comment, ideally. Or do, I guess. I don't know, it's good for engagement. Anyways, the point of this video is not going to be about why I think Blizzard is actually making really good decisions, because I don't think they are. It's going to be about explaining why I think the common refrain of just listen to the fans isn't useful, workable, or helpful as a suggestion towards developers, or as a mentality for anyone, fan or developer, to hold, both in the context of Overwatch as well as just in general. Now,
Oh god, we're talking about Overwatch?
So when Overwatch 1 was still a thing, right, before they killed it for no fucking reason whatsoever.
Oh, they did kill it for a reason.
No.
More money!
Yeah. But the guy, what's his face? The lead developer of it, him who were on camera all the time. He kept talking about engagement with the players and about listening to player feedback and how they had to sift through all of it to find the useful stuff and apply that to the game.
Jeff Kaplan, I think.
Yeah.
Trying to remember.
Oh, with something like that, I can imagine, and especially since you have a relatively young player audience, and with the millions of players they have. Yeah, sure. It's going to be a lot of work, but if you want to do that, that's your job.
Yeah, and they were listening to the players, trying to improve the game. Actually trying to make it better, but well, apparently that's a bad idea. Apparently. Oh.
The customer is always right does not mean that the customer is always objectively correct about reality. It just means that the customer knows what he wants. Mm-hmm. If you give that to the customer is happy. Sometimes the customer doesn't know how to formulate that well. But if you do give the customer what he wants, he's going to be happy. And that's why the customer is always right. That's what that means. And this is the same. Players are customers, not consumers. We're not pigs.
No, consumer is someone who still watches Disney Wars and the MCU.
Yeah.
Made similar videos to this in the past. Back in March of last year that talked about why striking a balance in Overwatch is so challenging. There was Why Don't Game Developers Fix Obvious Problems from last August, discussing how some people get frustrated with game developers when it feels like they're avoiding an obvious solution to an obvious problem. Yeah. And there's Hitting GM Doesn't Mean You Understand Balance from last December, about how being good at a game isn't the same thing as knowing how to manage a game.
And further detail is, it's not just a rock, paper, scissors issue, because you have several wacky abilities that all affect the game very differently, and you create a Sisyphusian task. This is never gonna be complete. It's never gonna be done to completion. That everything's gonna be perfectly balanced. It's impossible. You have to constantly adjust. It's Warcraft 3 was with the add-on pretty well balanced, despite the vast differences between the races.
Even if
that is still simpler, I think that is still simpler to pull off than this.
And even if the characters are, sort of balanced against each other, strength and weakness wise, and you get one character who's weak against another in an engagement with that character they're weak against. The player playing as the weaker character can still take advantage of the terrain and the other players on skills to, overcome the other player. They can just...
Because if you have different roles to fulfill, of course, balancing becomes a whole nother beast. That's the difference to a strategy game. In a strategy game, you have various different units that you can work in conjunction. In a game like this, you just play that one unit that has this one role. And it's a team game, so it's about synergy. Mm-hmm. That's how do you balance that? Very, 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 very minutely and carefully. That's the answer.
Yep. Balance a game. This isn't like And when I actually offered this topic to my channel members to vote on, I did get some questions along the lines of like, didn't you already make a video about this? And so I want to avoid repeating myself too much when it comes to this stuff. This video will focus specifically on the just listen to the players criticism that developers tend to face and an analysis of that argument and why it's not helpful. And while that'll obviously overlap with those other videos because, you know, they're related topics and I will be referring back to them a few times throughout it, I just wanted to make that clear up front so that people don't think I'm deliberately skating around those topics or that I'm like trying to avoid discussing them. There's already an hour's worth of content for me on this subject, so feel free to explore those videos if you'd like to see more of my thoughts and my expansion on those particular issues. Also, if you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to subscribe to see more. I'm currently working on a video about the problem with the games that are labeled as Overwatch killers, another video about how the Pinkertons are represented in games because process elimination has ruined my brain, and we'll be making one of these two videos depending on what my channel members vote for this month. Speaking of, if you're a channel member, make sure to go to the community tab to vote before midnight on September 10th. And if you'd like to vote but you aren't a member yet, you can grab a membership for $5 a month by clicking the join button below. Anyways, I think that's enough runway for this video. We need to...
I will give him props for speaking at a proper pace.
We need to talk about the actual subject of the video, and I think the best place to start with that will be breaking down the actual argument that's being made here. Part 1. Listen to the players. The core of this argument is an old one. Listen to the fans, listen to the community, listen to the audience. Like, all of these are old fan community sentiments regardless of the medium and regardless of the fandom. If it's something you can be a fan of where there is a creator or a manager or an executive in charge of decision making, then there is conflict to be found. This is something that's especially true if there are divergent narratives between different adaptations, with Game of Thrones being a really good example. The books and TV shows go in different directions, and George R.R. Martin is famously, publicly, not always a big fan of how different creatives have adapted his books, and fans argue about which characterization of different...
Wait. We're jumping into stories here. This is not the argument. The argument is specific to games. You cannot connect the same relationship between the readers of a book or the watchers of a show to video games. It doesn't work. It's a game is a piece of software that changes every time they make an update for balancing issues or content issues. A story is published. You could edit the grammar, you could fix the spelling, you could translate it, but other than that, a book's a book. And that is purely an egotistical experience of the writer. The writer could have sensibilities that an audience might have, but ultimately a writer can do whatever the hell they want. So no, an author should not listen to the fans or to the audience. It's assumed he's already done that.
No author has to like the adaptation anyone makes of his stuff.
I think the issue with Martin and the Game of Thrones TV series is in the later series of the series, the writers of the show ended up having to make up their own plot because he hadn't written it yet. So,
well, he had the outline, but they had already diverted from book content so far before that, seasons before that, that they should have just run with that and written their own thing. As many anime do that eventually surpass the released manga content, but they had already diverted from what was already written. Several characters and subfactions are missing. But that aside, these two hacks that ran Game of Thrones into the ground, well, they do not have any creativity, and that's why they turned to soap opera shit once they ran out of material and diverted too far. That's why that failed.
And also,
They're the real ones.
he's going on to the argument that I predicted. Don't listen to the customer.
I don't know where that is where that listen to the customer thing is even in here in the George R. R. Martin argument.
Yeah, the closest we can get is you're writing a
Well,
I don't
the
know,
audience.
You're writing a sequel, and you're just listening to fans of what they'd like to see and hear, which is silly because if you're writing a sequel, you've already thought what you wanted to do, and you don't need other people's input unless it's like some intricate, complex thing, and some guy who's smarter than you or more clever than you thought, wouldn't it be interesting if, and then you're like, ooh, I'm going to incorporate or steal some of those ideas, which is totally normal. Then a writer might be inclined to say, okay, I'm going to listen to the audience and and silently take these guys' ideas and make them my own. But that's a, again, iteration of a work, but a sequel or a trilogy or whatever. That's different than a game. So I
Counterpoint. Jar Jar Binks. He was supposed to have more of a role in episode 2.
oh, okay.
Lucas had to cut it short because the fans really didn't like the character at the time.
Yeah, those
Well,
are.
I think had he done what he actually intended, what everyone just rumors he intended, that would have been a great redemption
Might have
of
been better,
Jar Jar backwards. Then you would have watched that again and thought like, oh damn.
Yeah.
But
The
you have
real
to pull
ones.
that through.
You
and-
might think that the nature of this in terms
Sadly,
of video
didn't.
games is new because of the argument going beyond the narrative and expanding into the gameplay and the mechanics, but you would also be wrong there. Tabletop gamers have fought with tabletop publishers forever. Different editions of Dungeons and Dragons have focused on different mechanics, complexity levels, races, classes, and gameplay styles, and fans who enjoyed the way things were done in previous generations or previous editions, or whose gameplay styles were no longer viable, or at least not as viable, would be mad about it. Alternatively, if a change wasn't made that players wanted or expected or felt was necessary, the same thing would happen. This is also pretty common in sports, where the arguments about rules
D&D is a bad example. Because you have to distinguish between role players and power gamers who only dungeon crawl. For the latter, these things may be more relevant because they're basically just playing Diablo as a board game. For the former, the role players, the rules aren't really that important. They're just more like guidelines to help you formulate your character. That's all. Because in a real role-playing campaign, you do not have that much combat to begin with, or any dice challenges really. That's just crutches for beginners and mediocre game masters.
The fans of professional sports will argue about whether or not a rule
feel
change makes the
personally
spectator
attacked.
experience better or worse, or will demand a change that to them seems obvious. Maybe they'll want a rule change that helps their team. Maybe they'll just want a rule change that they feel like is rewarding the wrong kind of skill for the game they want to support. The player
Another thing about Dungeons and Dragons and such games is you're never bound to play the new edition. You don't like that, you play the old edition. You don't like a rule, you house rule it. So for D&D, that's a horrible example. I'm sorry. Stay with video games, because you can't just edit that in most. But tabletops are effectively board games, and most board games aren't played the way they're written in the manual in the first place. Everybody has house rules because they have misinterpreted things or they don't like certain things, so they added certain things themselves. Basically, almost every board game that is out there in some household is modded.
I think most people who have ever played Monopoly
Oh god,
accidentally invented their own house rules for it.
it's
Like,
so frustrating. Anytime
like-
when I was a kid and I got to somewhere and I wanted to play Monopoly, they played it completely different with stuff that
Like-
wasn't in the manual, but they insisted it is in the manual. And I'm not gonna. I would just play it your way. It's fine. It's fine. It's not in the
like
manual,
with-
but let's do it.
Like with all tax money going into a pot and whoever lands on free parking getting all the tax money. That's a surprisingly common house
Super
rule.
common. Yeah, it's a super common house rule. Another one I ran into was when you get on a street that you can just buy all the houses and hotels at once, which is nonsense. But hey, it was 6-year-olds, so why not let them have fun? That was the
especially
same with
for
Dungeons and
spectators are
Dragons.
just
You
a
don't like
smaller portion of
something,
people who
leave it
care
out.
and will argue
You don't need
about
to do
this.
the
Will
massive damage
similarly
rule.
argue that certain penalties
it's
should
fun.
be increased, decreased, or adjusted based on personal experiences, or that gameplay should be changed to meet the needs of the people. At a very fundamental level, this is an argument that intends to argue for a democratization of the product in question. The fans, the players, whoever is making the argument is saying that the community at large should get a say in what they get. And I don't think that this is an inherently bad sentiment by any stretch of the imagination. Like, it doesn't make you a bad person if you believe this. I think it's very understandable. People who hold this position tend to believe that the community at large has a bigger understanding of the topic at hand because they're inherently a much larger group of people than whoever is responsible.
The relevant thing about that, I'd say, is from the quantity of players, you can get an emotional sentiment. What area, what specific part of the design is bad? And because that's what everybody complains about, so you look into it, maybe players have a solution for that, but maybe they're not the right solutions. But you will know that everybody complains about this, so people make suggestions about this. So let's look into how we can make it better. That's basically what that is for. Doesn't mean that the community decides how to fix it. Because that's usually just singular people.
Yeah, it's like the forums
Inevitably overlook key.
of any company. They build up forums or a bug forum, whatever you want to call that, into certain sections, and they don't follow, depending on the company, everything everyone says because it's random people who bought their product, and we all know that's not valuable input. That's just, well, I really like this, right? I don't like that. Great. I've seen thousands of suggestions on the Bioware forums back in the day. They might have heard one or two of them and implemented some of them. You don't know exactly how or what. But other than that, the people from different walks of life will say crazy things. And this is mostly story-related stuff, not gameplay-related stuff. Gameplay is, the developers already have that figured out. They're doing their own thing. They're balancing it their own way. And they argue with the designers all the time. It's nothing to do with the community feedback. But that's that style of game and that style of feedback. So no one says a game developer has to have a forum or a contact us button or anything like that. It's nice nowadays because we're so social, but that's not essential or required.
Key issues or solutions because their viewpoint is just limited as a result of that. A writer or an editor or a handful of test readers might not pick up on a problem that a million fans will, and it's very possible that the people who are writing the wikis and participating in fan discourse are going to be more intimately familiar with every little detail of the piece.
Yeah, but this is again the difference between QAing and treating your beta or your early release or whatever you want to call it as a QA team, like all the player feedback, and actually making new content in version 2 or DLC. So how do you treat that? I don't know anymore because it's been so blurred with all these games and all these big communities. And Baldur's Gate 3 was always the best example because you guys remember all the crazy bugs, all the visual bugs, all the cutscene bugs, the gameplay bugs that they had to iron out while they were finishing off Chapter 3 or Chapter 4, whatever it was. And that's why Chapter 3 was so rushed and it feels rushed. So, yeah, a lot of bad things can happen during beta. And QA that lasts years and years.
Mediator. And like I said, to a large extent, they are right. You know, there's a reason why audience feedback is very useful. There's a reason why people want to hear what people are saying about the things they make. However, it's important to make the distinction between the good faith and bad faith versions of this argument, because both tend to present in a similar way but come from very different places with very different goals. The bad faith version of this argument assumes an inherent degree of deliberate neglect or unchecked incompetence among whoever is responsible for managing the property, and positions the fans as the opposite, neither inherent.
That's not bad faith, that's just their opinion. They just don't like the direction it's going. They say, I don't like BioWare because of XYZ, or I love BioWare because XYZ. It's their bias, positive or negative, makes no difference.
Inherently incompetent, more informed, and more manages it. This is the, I bet everyone who develops this game is hard stuck bronze while I'm top 500, ergo they're stupid and I'm better than them argument. Or the, I played the sport for 20 years, I understand what rule changes needs to happen better than the commissioner argument. Or the creator of this story just doesn't understand it as well as I do, therefore they clearly don't care as much and should be listening to fans to figure out what to write next argument.
None of those are bad faith, they're just, what is it, the bias of, it's someone either assuming that they know more than they do, or you know.
Yeah, it comes down to I'm smarter than the writer, or I'm a better player than the developer, and that sometimes is the case. But you know, what What are you going to do? Knock on their door? Hey, can I talk to all the writers on this team and sit in the writing room and tell them how much they suck? I mean, I'd love to do that, but that won't change minds, and they're not going to care because they already have their job done.
And also, the animosity towards the developers, that's still not bad faith. That's assuming the developers themselves are acting in bad faith.
Yeah. It's also how the social media managers or the forum managers or whatever the feedback is treated properly. Like there are literally BioWare influencers I've found on Twitter that are the dumbest, pro game people I've ever seen. I don't even know if they play the games, but anything BioWare does or anything their company does, they're like, awesome. And I'm like, how is that? It's a screenshot of something that will not come out in 3 years. Why is that good? What is it? And it could be actual screenshots. It could be fan art. It could be anything. And it's the dumbest proselytizing stuff you've ever seen. I was like, who is this for? And these people are just, women on Instagram or whatever, showing off their midriffs. Like, this is a gamer? This is someone who cares about the future of an RPG series? Probably not, but, that's the people you find online, and they block you for criticizing whatever. So this happens. This is what these companies do. They can't be bothered to deal with the thousands of people, if not tens of thousands of people, giving them feedback. So they just get people who are pro us and just leave it at that. Why do you think the Dragon Age stuff just came out all this month? We've been bone dry for like a decade. All of a sudden, all this content. Oh my God, came out of nowhere.
I miss BioWare. It's a shame they stopped making games.
I know.
I don't want to present everyone who has ever said this or expressed this sentiment as acting in bad faith. There is a good faith version of this argument where the mentality is more, I believe the developers are sincerely trying their best but are missing something that they would find if they...
That's not a good faith argument.
That's assuming good faith.
Yeah, I could say Drew Karpyshyn and all these other writers and all these developers are trying their best. Of course they're trying their best. They're getting paid. They're professionals. They want the best. Every person who makes a game wants to do the best thing they could do. That's not a contention. They're just making crap.
I mean, you could actually say about one of those Kickstarter games where the creator just ran away with the money. You could say, well, he's trying his best. He's doing his best.
Right. But they still suck.
Making the game, guys.
But they still suck. Exactly.
That would be a bad faith argument. That would.
Yeah.
You're saying positive things about this scumbag who's obviously just scammed people out of money and ran away with it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've seen some of those. I paid into some of those. I think the recent one is Witchmarsh, which looked like it had a functioning game on day one. You're like, wow, this game is ready to go. Just give us a release date. And life happens, and they'll never release. They watered down their game into this side story game, like a prequel bullshit. You're like, are you kidding me? And you're asking for more money. It's this crazy dev hell scenario of you can't produce a thing, even if it was broken. You just released the thing you said you were going to release on the day it was supposed to be released, and that would be fine. And you could update it, see if it lives, see if people care anymore. But this has been going on for, 8 years now? 9 years? And then we have Star Citizen, whatever that's going to... We don't even know if that's a thing.
That's never going to release because the guy making it, he specifically wants it so that only people with the most high-end computers can run it. So he's forever going to be making it, more and more demanding.
It's insane.
People with...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should have come out right.
Never play it.
That should come out years before Starfield came out, and then Bethesda went, whoops, our game sucks. We should not release this game for another decade or so. Anyway,
But Smud, it's been in the making for 25 years.
It's the most invested Kickstarter ever. I don't care. It's stupid.
It's like No Man's Sky, except No Man's Sky had a redemption arc, whereas Starfield is never going to have a redemption arc.
Yeah, I would hate to see that guy on all the talk shows and saying all the big things that he promised 10 years ago, or was it 9 years ago? 10 years ago?
Sean Murray.
Not Sean. No. The Star Citizen guy, the guy who did Wing Commander.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember his name. But if he did that, jeez.
Oh.
Give the guy a face. Give the guy a voice. No. Anyway.
Isn't that...
They just have a broader range of experiences they can see. Or fans have enough distance from the product to have more of an objective analysis of it, whereas the developers are obviously neck deep in it at all times, so of course they're going to miss some things. Or, probably the more common one that I feel like I see, is that the executives are not allowing the developers to...
I feel like this is a guy pressing his face against the window and trying to explain what all the ants are doing in the ant maze. He has no idea what he's talking about.
So maybe if the fans make a stink about it, then they'll be forced. The version of this argument isn't really a particularly useful one to engage with because it isn't really one based on wanting to improve the media in question or the product in question. The bad faith version of the listen to the players argument is about, frankly, a delusional, misplaced belief that you are owed decision-making power on the grounds that you were just
This is stupid. Let's go ahead a little bit.
singular being listened to themselves. Anyone who agrees with them is welcome to join the party, but fundamentally, the bad faith version of this argument revolves around centering an
what is this term? Bad faith argument? Like, stop it.
I think he is trying to explain how he maps out the world,
This is dumb.
not necessarily how things work.
This is so silly.
main. Both of us will have bias, both of us will argue for different things based on our own perspectives, all that stuff, but the distinction to make here is between people who acknowledge their bias and actively incorporate opposing perspectives, or at least consider them. Like, they're the kind of people who will try and see the issue from the point of all players when they're arguing to listen to the players, as opposed to, let's say, a hypothetical somber main who exclusively focuses on the balance change.
Hypothetical what main?
Character in the game.
Okay, so he's referring to one of
he's
these.
talking about himself because he's currently playing as Sombra right now.
All right, let's just skip ahead here.
Mean different things
In the
for different
footage.
reasons, and one of those camps is deliberately doing it to try and pretend they're part of the other. And this means it's not just hard to talk about.
What are you arguing about?
Okay.
A bunch of people online bitching to each other? Like, what is this?
Okay, he's actually mentioned an example of bad faith, where one of the groups of people will pretend to be part of the other camp and try to make that group look bad. So
Yeah, but then you're already that's already political. Because you have intrigue and all of that shit going on when that's not argument, that's not listening. When that's going on, yeah, you can't really listen to the players anymore because there's just childish nonsense going on.
All right, part 2.
At the beginning of the subject previously, hitting GM doesn't mean you understand balance, why is balancing Overwatch so hard, and why don't game developers fix obvious problems? Well, I think you should go watch those videos separately if you want to see my full arguments on those topics. They are also kind of useful here. They're instructive for our discussion because they each have...
Did this guy interview anyone about these issues, like at the company? Like, this would solve a lot. Just write an email saying, how do decisions get made? How do you update things? What's the feedback loop for user feedback and deployments? Like, what? He's just speculating.
Mm-hmm.
This is silly.
I mean, the better you are at a game, generally, the better your understanding of the mechanics. At least that's what you'd think. It would give you an insight in how the game functions.
This is like a guy looking at a kaleidoscope, and instead of taking apart and figuring out how the mirrors work, he's just like, well, I see the pretty lights, and that could be an element of optics I don't understand. Let me like ramble on about that for a few months, as opposed to, I don't know, learning physics and talking to actual people who made the thing and how did you make it? Why was it made this way? Blah 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 blah.
He's at step 1 of trying to understand the world. Magical ideas. It's okay. It's an attempt, but you need to go beyond that.
Yeah, how does the black box of video game development work? I don't know. Let's talk about it.
That fans will make about game balance. And, crucially, there are arguments that can use these same words to mean very different things. As a result, it becomes important to learn how to read between the lines to analyze what the person making the argument.
So we're not talking about what the person's saying. You're talking about his bias, what he really wants.
He's less talking about players having suggestions and more about customer service. Because in customer service, you have to try to read between the lines to figure out what the hell does the customer even want.
Meaning their communication
when we talk
skills.
about because the customer may not know how to articulate the problem right, or is so furious because of something that, well, the problem is actually pretty simple. That once you figure out what that is, the emotion and solve it, the emotion dies down, and the customer is sorry for the emotional mess and everything. But that's not listen to the players. That's not what that is.
All right,
That's irrelevant to that, because that's, as I said before, when you have players who just go on about no, what you take is the quantity of players mucking about a certain point, about a certain aspect.
He goes on for 15 minutes just on this topic, reading between the lines. This is so silly.
Yeah, you should. Anytime you have to employ mind reading, which is what this is, don't spend too much energy on it. It'll just make you crazy.
All right, let's get at least the last part of this section, see what he has to say, because you could be talking about how do they make pizza, and he could be rambling on about, well, some people don't like cheese on their pizza, and let's talk about that for 15 minutes. Like, no.
Let's talk about pineapple for 10 minutes.
Yeah, those are weird. Wait, pineapple? You monster.
All right.
There's still at least the people who are genuinely trying to improve the game to some extent for everyone, and probably aren't deliberately misrepresenting what they believe will be the outcome of a given change. Meaning that if you have limited resources and you can't explore everyone's view, their perspective is probably the one that's more likely to yield a workable outcome. There are also other things that make this difficult. For one, a bad faith argument can easily...
Oh, he's back to the frickin' bad faith. Here we go. All right.
Just want to talk some shit. Those people can just be safely ignored, but they do still clog up everything and block out the good faith arguments. Even if it only takes a that needs to be... Part 3. The hidden asterisks.
What?
This seems more like a person who has a friend who may be some kind of, in the game development environment, and is just saying stuff that he heard and speculating on the rest.
I guess.
Yeah, this guy definitely has a friend who's a community manager.
He might know a guy who's a friend with a guy who's on the team, but that's about it. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Oh.
To the players as a mentality is that it is inherently an oversimplification. Obviously, nobody who's saying this literally believes all players must be listened to 100% and have their opinions weighted equally. Nobody here is looking for pure direct democracy where everyone who logs into Overwatch should get exactly one vote on every element of the game's balance, because that would be objectively insane. Every reasonable person would agree that the definition of players in this context requires more nuance than that. And yet, that doesn't mean everyone is going to agree on what that nuanced definition of players should be. Should there be a requirement to play a certain amount of hours on a given balance patch?
Oh my god.
Minutia nonsense babble.
Let's try this. We're at 26.
Will generally be presented based on what will get people to stick around for the longest. I am part of that too. I try to generally avoid it, but it's impossible to not. It is part of what the platform is. Twitter, meanwhile, is a platform where every argument is limited by a short character limit, meaning that nuance is hard and rage bait for engagement is popular. Overwatch TikTok is genuinely awful and full of just uniquely extremely bad opinions for reasons I can't understand. I don't get why TikTok is specifically filled with terrible Overwatch takes, but the only times you'll find a sincerely good opinion on Overwatch on that platform
because
is
it's
been
TikTok
plagiarized from somewhere else. And the only reason I'm providing that caveat is that I found at least one person plagiarizing my videos on TikTok, and even then he still butchered it. Anyways, it's not just about the where of it all. We also need to ask what we want them to do.
So the only good takes on on TikTok account this guy when his own videos get plagiarized?
What?
I would assume
Okay,
this is due to the
so
TikTok
narcissist.
algorithm. I would assume this is due to TikTok algorithm and him seeing stuff that he actually wants to
He
see.
He did just say that the only time he sees some good take on TikTok is when he sees his own videos get plagiarized.
I wish
So,
this
yeah.
person would extol his virtues into, like, I don't know, academia, and like focus all this energy at something a little more helpful than just rambling about what he thinks or guesses a bunch of people in another part of the world make software do. It's this, like, what is this?
I would suggest. I mean, he is trying to theorize about how the job is done without knowing how the job is done. That is so far okay until he presents it as fact, which he does. My suggestion would be do the job. Work for a game company as some community dude and actually gather the information. Because what you do is look for trends, not the details. That's all. That's all. That's fucking all.
I'll just skip out here. Let's go to 30 minutes, hopefully.
Those how bugs get prioritized. The more complaints you get about a certain bug, the higher up it is on the developer's list. So report if you encounter a bug, do write a ticket. That's how they get fixed.
All right, 30 minutes.
My campaign manager, while he was out door knocking, met a man who asked him if I supported bringing back mask mandates. This was in 2021, just for context.
Mask mandates. You're talking about...
How did we get here?
Jesus Christ.
Who knows?
Mask mandates. All right, something interesting. Here we go.
But what did you skip?
I don't know. He jumped so quickly.
We're 30 minutes in all of a sudden.
I know. It's pointless ramble.
Campaign manager said if it was necessary, then yes. And the man immediately scoffed and said that was stupid. His sincere suggestion was to instead spray the entire city we lived in with Clorox twice a day to disinfect it, and said I'd have his vote if I promised to do that. For the uninitiated,
it would be less
Clorox
dumb.
is bleach.
Yeah.
He wanted to aerosolize bleach and then douse an entire city with it twice a day.
While that is also not healthy, that would actually do something about that virus as well as any other pathogen. Contrary to the mask mandates, which we know are blubber. Those stats are in. Because you just... The air just goes sideways out.
Vote as anyone else. A challenge of democracy is that even if you are smart, you also have to acknowledge that stupid people exist too. In the context of Overwatch and the listen to the players argument, it's important to remember that you and the people you agree with and the smart people in the community are not the only players. The dumbest mother...
Yeah, but even if dumb people agree with you, it's the same idea. What's the argument then?
I mean, one example would be the guy in the mirror that he talks to.
Not everyone's as smart as me, but, you know.
It feels like it.
Yeah.
That is what he's been doing for a lot of it.
Within the last week of a competitive season are also players, and there is no control from removing them from this equation of listening to them.
You just don't listen to them. How is that hard to remove from an equation? The devs do it all the time. Why?
Players are not the dumbest things on earth. That may have gone tilted more in that direction since the 2000s, where suddenly everybody got onto the internet, not just people who had to get past technical hurdles.
Yeah, it's the same with the opposite with League, where they instead of listening to the general fans of everyone playing their game where they make their money, they listen to the professionals because they wanted things to be certain ways. So they tweaked certain heroes or made entire heroes for certain individuals.
Well, there is I'd say for a game like League, there is a point to cater to the top tier of players because that's where the tournaments are at, as well as the mid tier which is the average player, which is the big mass. So you need characters catered to both those levels at the very least. And so that everybody can have fun on the respective skill level.
Yeah, I think that's it. And
I think it's completely viable if you have over 100 characters, for fuck's sake. And it was fine at 30 already. To have certain characters not viable for the top tier play because they were for average players.
But no one says the dev has to listen to a certain demographic or a certain elite fan base. Like, that's silly. You can do whatever you want.
Control for the possibility that you are, in fact, their team in the last week of the season and you just can't realize it. Sometimes when we talk about the hidden asterisks attached to an argument like this, it's possible for someone to try and define their specific understanding of the term. You could, in theory, define what you mean when you say listen in this context. The forms you expect them to do their listening in, the way they filter what they hear, and the way they act upon it.
Okay, is he just like never been in a formal debate before and doesn't know how words and communication works? Because he's just describing biases and forms of opinion and not saying everything all at once and all kinds of other forms of communication that a child would figure out growing up. And you don't need all these words to explain what he's trying. Like, he's been going on for half an hour about how people speak.
There are people who do not know the very basics of human existence.
Yep.
And always think of the poor alien anthropologists who are trying to study us. They rely on people like him.
Okay. Where are we? We're at 32 minutes. We have gotten nowhere. Authorial intent? Oh, he's going to bring this argument. Oh, that's going to be fun. All right.
Oh, joy.
What does that have to do with this topic? I had hope. This is a long thing, and the title sounded good that this might become a two-parter.
Populism is hard to argue against because,
Populism.
given that most of us have likely either been raised in or currently live in some flavor of a democracy,
Democracy again.
it's generally pretty ingrained to really value the principles of democracy.
What is he This is not politics. You're talking about a video game and listening to player feedback, dude. It's all that. There's no...
What you want is not democracy. What you want is a people's republic.
This is so...
What you want is a meritocracy.
No, what you really, really want is an aristocracy where all the players are armed and can hold the developers to account to make the changes that they want.
It has always been a glorified suggestion box, and a dev can at any time light it on fire and do whatever the hell they want. That's all it is.
Yeah.
This is so silly. Democracy.
Which is what Blizzard started doing the minute decided to burn Overwatch 1 to the ground.
Yeah.
Well, that was a dumb decision.
Okay.
But
One of those fundamental principles is that the people should have the power.
What this guy thinks?
The elites. This is not about elites, you numbnut.
This guy thinks,
This is the developers are the dungeon masters, the game masters. They are the gods of these worlds, of the games you play. They want to make a change, they make the change. They can't care about what you might want, what players might want. If they're they're good gods, then they make games that are even more fun.
I think
cool. If they have crappy gods, then they make Dustborn.
I think he's confusing shareholders with people who bought a game. There was a news report on some blog, I can't remember what gaming blog it was last week, about some company and some guy from the company who owns less than 1% in Ubisoft. And they were saying Ubisoft is going down a bad road. The people in charge are screwing over the development. And he didn't really talk about specific games, like what the games are about, because everyone knows Ubisoft is sucking really bad past few years. And he just says, we have to change direction. We have to get rid of the board. We have to, explain this away because all these games are not selling. And we know why they're not selling, but he was giving business reasons of the direction of the company. That's what this guy wants, only not on a business level, but on a content gameplay. I don't know what exact level, because he's rambling. It seems to be anything related to content. So that's what he wants. He wants to be a shareholder in a public company that can call the shots between the direction of a product, not this story and this gameplay element or this or that. Because that's you don't go through the social elements of how that is accomplished unless you're on the team. Who cares if you're outside the team? It's stupid. You're screaming at the wall and explaining. See how the paint hits the wall? Look, I think the developers can see that from the other side of the wall, and they could like use X-ray vision, and it's a red, it's exclamation mark, and then I write on the wall like "fix game, make better," and they'll listen to me. It's like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Oh, this is childish.
That's not a bad principle to hold on to by any stretch, but it is something that makes us vulnerable to people who cynically exploit democratic mentalities and...
What the fuck? What are you talking about? Someone who cynically exploits democratic mentalities. What is that? A libertarian?
A socialist.
I don't know.
It's going to bring up Trump in it.
A revolution? I don't know what the hell he's talking about.
It's going to start bitching about capitalism.
I guess. Why not?
So it's going to start bitching about capitalism, bring up Trump, and
we must we must seize the means of development.
Yeah.
The games we play that we don't produce.
Oh God, help me!
It's like the people who eat bread seizing the means of baking.
Their agenda. However, this is also avoiding a pretty massive problem with this argument that does need to be acknowledged as well.
Oh.
One that applies even if we somehow do manage to come to a consensus on every
We won't.
asterisk attached to the slogan, listen to the players. Part 4. Authorial intent.
Is that how you spell it? Yeah, okay. My brain is just another world right now. Oh God, here we go.
Why?
One of the hard things about being a fan of something is the disagreement between the fan and the creator about what the thing should be. The author's authority in this context is, to put it mildly, a topic of debate and has been for years.
No, it hasn't.
The example I brought up earlier is George R.R. Martin, the person who wrote and conceived A Song of Ice and Fire. But should he be given the final say on anything and everything that happens within the narrative universe? Is he the unquestionable authority?
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Do the fans have the right to headcanon something about the characters and treat it as fact until he says otherwise? And
They
what about even after he says
canon
otherwise?
whatever they want.
Do they have the right to question his decisions about the
called
portrayals of certain
fanfiction.
characters or the way he handles particular issues? Does someone adapting his work have the right to make changes that go against his intent, even if he hadn't written that part of the story or expressed his intentions there? In the case of a contradiction between the books and TV shows, which gets to be correct?
The books.
Yeah.
The books. Because that's what they were. That's what it's based on. The TV show is an adaptation, and it turns crap.
Yeah.
What's so hard to understand about it?
Again,
In what strange world do you live where everything is relative?
Yeah, again, we have to make the distinction between a book or book series with a writer and a video game multiplayer battle arena thing that he's been rambling on about. There's very different products, very different media. You can't even compare how authorial intent and player response is in relation to those things. So, fine, George R.R. Martin.
The ultimate creator of Game of Thrones, the TV show, in terms of who gets ultimate final say. Does anyone get ultimate unquestionable authority? If one of those adaptations goes against what George R.R. Martin wants, does he have the right to say that it's no longer canon?
That is such a dumb designed weapon.
Do fans have the right to use those characters to write their own stories to explore alternate timelines for them? There is no objectively correct answer to...
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is.
There is.
What is this? Does he think because it exists within the public, like you buy a thing, now it's yours, and you can say what it is? Yeah, you could say whatever the hell you want. It doesn't make it true.
He's a subjectivist.
Yeah, I could say...
He doesn't know it.
My CD of Final Fantasy VII is actually the best Frisbee in the world, and I'm a Frisbee god, and I could play Frisbee with myself, and no one could beat me, and blah, blah, blah.
You motherfucker. How dare you do
PSA,
that?
don't use CDs as Frisbees. They will cause damage.
Yeah,
Yes.
don't do that.
We know.
Any of
Wait,
the authors.
this one right there,
George R. R.
chat.
Martin views fanfic pretty negatively and hasn't been gentle with his criticisms of how the people who've adapted his books have
It's fan fiction.
made changes that he feels hurt his story. Anne Rice, the author of the Vampire Chronicles, was famously very hostile to fanfiction as well, seeing her characters as hers and hers alone to
No shit.
write, a sentiment she did soften on later in life to some degree, but she did still hold a lot of personal ownership over her creations.
Wow, who would have thought? When I make a pizza, I have authorial creation pride and feelings toward the thing I made. Like, whoa, I don't know. Why would I do that?
Anything of any worth, there will be fan fiction of it, and over 90% of fan fiction is utter garbage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Crowley's Twitter account was once famous for her declarations about the sexuality or race of various characters that were to be taken as gospel, instead of just, writing those things into her book. Nowadays, her Twitter is just famous for documenting the ongoing damage that the black mold in her home has done to her brain.
What? Who? Anne Rice? Who are we talking about?
What?
I don't know. I lost the name.
She might be Rowling because she
I am
did some of
guessing
this
the
stuff.
Rowling, yeah.
Was it wrong? Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
and with Rowling, there is this argument to be made that yes, she didn't write it in her books, which makes her kind of so she did it retroactively. That's obvious, and to appease crazy people that she later learned cannot be appeased. You can make all these claims, but that doesn't change the opinion of a naive reader who doesn't know any of this paratext nonsense that the author is doing. Because the text speaks for itself. The death of the author topic there is some point to it, but it's not to the extent that the people who are rabid about it want it to be. But overall, yes, the author has the last word. The author should also succeed in conveying whatever is claimed about what is going on. That's all.
And leftists have this thing about where apparently J.K. Rowling has black mold in all of her, 10 houses. And it's rotted her brain so that she doesn't want to bend the knee.
Well, isn't it nice of her then that she doesn't take in any refugees because they would just get brain rot too?
Oh, what a nice lady. Anyway,
She's protecting them.
yeah, I guess this is going nowhere. I'm not
Yes.
sure.
He's a bit scatterbrained, but he is not Noralities.
This is like saying my leg is detached from my body. Luckily, it wasn't my head. Yeah,
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
Still painful though. Anyway,
Inconvenient.
Green, meanwhile, not only argues in favor of Roland Barthes' book The Fault in Our Stars through the character of Peter Van Houten, but also grapples with its
That's what you
consequences in
just
the book
did.
as well as in real life, having previously acknowledged the inherent contradictions of a modern-day author with a social media presence trying to declare the death of the author in a tweet that reads,
Okay, I just have to say this after I saw some of these shots from the corner of my eye. Don't aim where they are. Aim where they're going to be.
Well, the character is playing as he's a more tactical character. You're not really. So she's a DPS, but she's also meant to be played tactically, and she's meant to place turrets in strategic locations so that.
You still have a gun
The other thing
that
that-
shoots slow-moving projectiles, which means
And-
you have to aim ahead. It's like the energy rifle in Unreal Tournament with its secondary attack mode that has a very slow-moving projectile. We were still able to hit things, and that was a very fast-paced game.
And if you look at the bottom middle of the screen, he's got a giant shield that stretches across the entire map to use.
So what? What's the point of a shield that stretches across the entire map? Because you're then all inside the shield bubble. That's dumb.
It only lasts for a few seconds, and it's basically it's her ultimate.
Yeah.
So
Is it a
it's-
bubble, or does everybody just get
Nah,
shield bonus?
It it stretches across the entire map, all the way up to the top of the map, to the bottom.
What does that actually do? Because that means everybody, including the enemies, are inside the shield bubble.
No. The enemies can't shoot through the shield. Allies can, but enemies can't.
All right.
This makes no sense.
That's okay. We're not playing the game.
This is a dumb game.
Let's keep going.
The author is dead, announces the author from other authors, like the Vampire Diaries creator L.J. Smith, have no authorial control over her works. She was contracted to write the works, and her publishing company maintained the rights even after terminating the contract. Some authors don't even exist. Franklin W. Dixon and Carolyn Keene, the authors, in air quotes, of the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew respectively,
There you go. Big
weren't
shield.
real people. They were a collective pseudonym used
That's
by a
not the
bunch of
entirety
authors
of
who
the
wrote
map.
books for those characters, and authorial intent for the characters was effectively held by the creators who contracted them for those books. The point is that authorial intent is a complicated, widely debated concept, even when there is a
No, it's not.
singular author, or at least a single name that's identified as the author who might possess authorial intent. However, this gets more complicated when you add in more people. A television show or a movie has a director, sure, but they're not the only ones with creative input. Writers, costume designers, makeup artists, actors, everyone else involved in the production is having some
Yes, and the producer says yes or no. It doesn't matter what they want. This is very simple.
creative say in the final product. And while the director is the one who has to give the final thumbs up,
No, it's the producer. They're the one writing the checks. They could say, I don't like it, stop. And then the director goes, but I like it. I don't give a shit. I'm writing your check. You're fired. Let me get a new director. Oh, wow, there's a new director who does exactly what I want. Fantastic. I like him better.
necessarily mean that every single element of the final product is, let alone that their intent needs to be the one that's uncritically accepted. And again, this is complicated further when you're adapting from existing media. Pretty Little Liars is a series that notably changed a lot between the books and the TV shows, with certain characters surviving in the show where they died in the books, and entire plot lines were massively overhauled. And sometimes the creators changed their minds because of the input of other creators on the project. The story goes that Jesse Pinkman was originally supposed to die at the end of the first season of Breaking Bad in the 9th episode, but the writer's strike of that year cut the season short at just 7 episodes, so he was eventually given a stay of execution. To some extent this is true, but it seems like there's more to the story than that as well. The writers knew that they liked Aaron Paul's portrayal.
That's great. What's your point? Holy hell.
Whose intent is
think
being
he has
manifested
the same amount of points as a fucking sphere.
This is getting nowhere.
into the final product here, and does it even matter? Does the buck stop with the director?
Why are you bringing that up if it doesn't matter? Like, why are you questioning the very question? Like, what?
It's a stream of consciousness rambling.
Let's bring up the topic. But why am I doing that? I don't know.
Individual writer gets to take credit. If you believe, who holds the blame? Does Aaron Paul deserve the credit for bringing more life to the character than anticipated? Do the writers deserve the credit? Do the directors? Who gets it? Does the writer's strike get credit?
What is this?
Nobody gives a shit.
What is he talking about? What?
Why is this about credit now?
Yeah, like this is like blaming someone for I don't know, racism or slavery. Like who do we blame for slavery? It's like, I don't know, Bob, the guy who did it 200 years ago.
We obviously blame the writer's strike because due to that the series wasn't written the way it was supposed to, and the character lived to the point where long enough for the show to get so much attention that they just continued it ad nauseam.
All right, let's see. There's any other sections here? Because I feel like just rambling in this one too.
This is the entire thing.
Fan behavior is section 5. And
Oh,
it's
joy.
6 minutes away. Oh god. Well, let's at least get to the end of this one. All right, let's try it. 46 minutes. Got 1 minute left.
I don't think that that's inherently wrong to want more people's voices to be heard, because again, it's a big fan base for something like Overwatch. There are a lot of people who play this game, have a lot of different perspectives, far more than is possible for Blizzard to have internally. So yeah, there is some real value to that. But I do think that there are also some fans, not just of Overwatch, but of frankly anything, who believe that their time investment in a piece of media entitles them to a say in how the piece of media...
You said this already.
I was going to say, wasn't this the point at the very beginning?
Okay, so usually when people said "but," that invalidates everything that they said up to the point of saying "but."
All right, next section.
It's why It's why I occasionally mock the. It's why I occasionally mock the person making the argument by going, this coherent argument, but
Not how
I
this
didn't
should
mean
work.
any of that.
Part 5. Fan behavior. You are a fan. You love this game. And I get
Nope.
that. You want to see it be its best self, and so do
Nope.
I. And it's not hard to argue right now that Overwatch is, for a variety of reasons, not exactly in its golden age. However, there is a very fine line between expressing your frustration for what you see as mismanagement of the property, or as a failure to achieve the potential of the game, or as a victim of mistakes in terms of balance, and believing that your intent as a fan should get to override authorial intent. The game is, ultimately, what the game is supposed to be. That does not mean that it is eternally
Right.
meant to be this way. The game will change again in the future and will probably continue changing indefinitely until the final servers are shut down. It also does not mean that the game is objectively good just because it's what the developers want. Even if they are exactly following their clear intentions, they will still make mistakes along the way and will need to correct that to reach their vision. And even if they do achieve their vision, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good product in the end. It might not be something you like, but that doesn't mean that they should have to change it. Maybe they don't want to make something you like, frankly. But all of that also doesn't mean that the fans are objectively wrong. The fans are able to identify problems, and there are tons of times where player feedback has helped the game improve. However, that shouldn't be taken to mean that the fans are always objectively correct.
Holy hell, dude. What are you
This
getting at?
sounded like word salad.
Fan behavior. People are not objective, but it doesn't mean they're not.
He's just saying every possible thing he could say. So that in all this word salad, the potential audience will hear something agreeable and run with that and think him a good commentator.
Good
Well, it's
Lord.
just babble.
And most reasonable high-ranking players will acknowledge that,
I
yeah,
don't care about that. We had this argument already.
and the desire to have your voice heard. I understand the desire to have the game you love become.
No.
Oh, stop with the commie speak.
Some people will be defensive and interpret it this far in the video for that, but at this point, whatever. I've done my best to explain why this is hard. I've made a way too long video about it, but this is the impossible task of criticizing a slogan like "listen to the players." The people who want to argue it in good faith are tired of.
Okay, back to... This is so stupid. He has said the same
Well, he is
thing.
summarizing now.
Every
hopefully.
single section's the same. It doesn't matter if he's talking about authorial intent or whatever the hidden asterisk bullshit was all about. It's going to be back to the democratization of gaming and what does the player really want? And is he lying? Is he biased? Is he a pro? Is he a casual? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, it's the same crap every single section. Usually, sections have specific topics. And that's why you have sections and you title them this topic, that topic, and then you talk about just that. And at the last sentence or the first sentence, you connect it to the previous or the next section so it all flows nicely. Not, I'm going
That's
to
smart.
ramble for an
To
hour.
that, you'd have to know what you're doing.
What's wrong with these? Did they fail at school? Like, what happened? Did they learn how to write an essay and then just threw it out the door?
No,
Like,
Smud, it's worse.
I think he had some idea beforehand. Like he thought that, yeah, I will do this, 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 and this. And then he started going at it without a script, thinking that what he was doing was what he planned beforehand.
And it is worse. It's not that people like this are failing school. It's that school has failed them.
yeah, well.
Because I do think this guy is capable of logical thought. He just has never done
No.
it properly because nobody showed it.
He has made multiple videos on this. I bet those topics or those videos are exactly the same as this one. He's just rambling on and on about whatever. And he made 5 of them. And this is,
I think you might be right.
yeah, this is so silly. And people are like, oh, he's so smart. He's so articulate. No, he's speaking fast. That's it. It's the same crap. Anyway, I'm done. I hope there's no memes. How could you make memes of this guy?
Hold on. Let's
There's
see.
got to be no
I
memes.
am disappointed.
Yeah.
Ah, D'Antoni.
Thank
Oh
God.
no.
All right. Well, we didn't have Anime Monday this week, so sadly this is all we got. Hopefully, soon you guys will give us something that is not a gigantic rambling. I don't know what to call this. This is probably just his channel. This is all he does. I'm going to post a video about me throwing up.
Yeah, I feel like 90% of people making any kind of content should be making a scripted content, and they don't, which is why we are getting stuff like this. You can, of course, you can make the same mistakes with the script, but it's if you are actually trying it, rewriting it, then it's much harder to do stuff like that, because this was a stream of consciousness and nothing else.
Well, it wasn't as bad as that previous guy we had, who was absolutely horrible. Like, that was a mess. And I can't.
Which one's Smud?
I'm trying to remember the topic. I don't have my my channel open to scroll down the videos.
Let's see. Spite response to MJ Tanner's Spite moving in media.
That sounds like it. Yeah, that's the one. That was
why forced diversity is misunderstood. Jesse Gender.
Well, that was also rambly, but not as convoluted and long as this. It was the MJ Tanner one that the guy just kept going all over the place, and you're just like, I can't make sense of it.
And also kept calling Tanner MG.
I don't remember that one. Oh God, I've had such a fantastic summer that all this stuff just, I can't, like, my brain just doesn't process it anymore. I'm just like, what? We did that? Like, oh God, that was horrible. But yeah, no, it's I'm enjoying life, so this is just keep my brain listening to garbage, so that when I do listen to good stuff, I go, oh wow, talent, genius, hard work, art, craft, design, all that good stuff hits me and go, oh wow. This is not it, unfortunately. So yeah, maybe this guy needs to go to game school, or I don't know, English, philosophy, pick any of the arts. I don't care. Just study it, sir. And you'll learn how not to speak. That would be nice. Anyway, that's enough for me. I'm gonna go get some tea and just enjoy my evening, which has gotten warmer and warmer as I've spoken. So I gotta take off some clothing. Jeez, just open my door and go for a walk or something. It's pretty warm in here. Anyway, guys, thanks for the horrible suggestion that happens once in a while. And hopefully we'll get an actual conversation about games or gaming or the dev process or how games are made or how they're not made, or
Hopefully tomorrow.
I don't know. Yeah, it could be tomorrow. I don't know. It could be next week. Hopefully we'll get an anime one or a manga one on Monday. This is I think the summer season is done in anime, so we're getting into the fall season. So a bunch of new programs are probably starting next week. That might be fun. And hopefully we'll see the solo leveling pop up soon. Don't know. All kinds of new stuff.
Quick question. Did Gargamel react, or
No.
is it still?
Yeah, never heard of
do that.
No, that was
Yeah,
like 2 months turned to 2 weeks turned to 2 months, and then he just forgot about us, I guess. So I'm like, that's great. I don't care.
Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, some
Apparently,
crazy.
he had something special planned.
Oh yeah, he totally forgot about it. So special, just passed his mind. Anyway, guys, go relax, have a good time, enjoy the last vestiges of the summer, whatever's got going. I've got all these festivals planned in Toronto to check out. They're all fun, wonderful things, provided the weather's okay, of course. But you guys go outside, enjoy it, and wear your not your flip-flops, but your sneakers, and maybe bring an umbrella. The weather's kind of strange. You never know. But have a good one. We'll talk to you soon. Good night.